Keanu Reeves had always believed he had seen the worst of the world. He had walked through alleys where the city forgot its people, sat beside strangers whose eyes told stories darker than any script he had ever read, but nothing he had seen prepared him for what he stumbled upon that cold, rainy night behind the back entrance of an old supermarket. He was driving home after a late shoot, exhausted, his mind replaying lines he could not get out of his head. The city streets were half asleep, neon lights flickering like tired eyes. He slowed down when he noticed a small figure huddled against the brick wall, her thin blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. At first, he thought it was just another person lost to the streets, but then he saw the way she moved, carefully, protectively, like she was guarding something precious under that blanket. He pulled over without really thinking. The rain hit his windshield like tiny stones. For a second, he just sat there, engine humming, heartbeat louder than the rain. He could have kept driving. People did it every day, eyes forward, hearts closed. But something in him wouldn't let him leave. Keanu stepped out into the cold. The girl flinched when he approached, her eyes wide like a cornered animal. She was no older than 16, maybe 17. Her hair was damp and matted to her cheeks. Her lips were cracked from the cold. But what struck him most were her arms, wrapped tight around to tiny bundles, hidden beneath the blanket. "Hey," he said softly, crouching a few feet away, so he wouldn't scare her more. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." She didn't answer, just held the bundles closer. A tiny whimper rose from under the blanket, followed by another, to babies, so small their cries sounded like the faintest wind chimes in the storm. Keanu felt something twist inside his chest. He took off his coat and laid it on the wet ground between them, a peace offering. "My name's Keanu," he said, his breath misting in the cold air. Are they yours?" The girl hesitated. Then she nodded, her chin trembling. "How old are they?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She swallowed hard. 3 months, she said, her voice cracking. "Twins." Keanu looked closer. The babies' tiny faces peeked out, flushed red from the cold, eyes shut tight. He could see how the girl's body was curved around them like a human shield. "Have you eaten?" he asked. The girl's eyes dropped to the concrete. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Keanu stood up slowly, careful not to spook her. "Wait here," he said. He jogged back to his car, grabbed the leftover sandwiches and bottled water from his bag. When he returned, he set the food on his coat, pushing it closer to her. "Please," he said, "eat something. For them. For you." She reached out with shaking hands, tearing small pieces of the sandwich and slipping them into her mouth, like she was afraid to take too much at once. She fed the babies drops of water with a tiny plastic spoon from her pocket. Keanu watched, his heart breaking and burning all at once. He had spent millions on movie sets, fancy dinners, big donations to charities, but none of that felt as real as watching this girl feed to tiny lives with crumbs. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes huge under the streetlight. "Lucy," she said. "Lucy," he repeated softly. "And them, Sophie and Sam," she whispered. She traced a finger over each baby's cheek, her cracked lips forming a small, broken smile. The rain kept falling. Cars passed by, their drivers not seeing the miracle hidden in the shadows. Keanu sat down beside her, not caring that the ground soaked through his pants. They didn't talk much. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound too small for the moment. In that tiny corner of the city, a girl no one cared to see protected to tiny hearts with all she had left. And Keanu, the man who had everything, realized that sometimes true strength looks like an exhausted teenage mother shivering under a thin blanket, daring the world to take what little she had left. He didn't know how yet, but deep inside, Keanu promised himself he would not leave her here. Not tonight, not ever. But what he didn't know was that Lucy's story held secrets darker than the streets. They sat on, secrets that would test every part of his soul and show him that saving one person sometimes means facing the things you fear the most. Lucy couldn't remember the last time she had felt warm. Even now, sitting next to this stranger in the rain, she half expected him to leave like everyone else always did. But Keanu didn't move. He stayed beside her, his coat draped around her shoulders, his eyes watching the babies like they were his own. The city noises blurred into the background. Lucy tried to keep her eyes open, but her body was giving up. She hadn't slept properly in days, not since she'd left the shelter that turned her away when they found out she had no papers and no one to vouch for her. The streets became her home, cold alleys and hidden corners where no one asked questions, but no one offered help either. Keanu's single quotes S voice pulled her back. "Lucy, where's your family?" She flinched. "Gone," she said. Her voice was flat, like the word itself had no weight, because it had been empty for so long. He wanted to ask more, but the look in her eyes stopped him. They were too old for a girl her age, eyes that had seen too much, trusted too little. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" Keanu asked. She shook her head. She looked down at Sophie and Sam, curled up against her chest. "I can't go to the shelter. They'll take them away. They said I can't keep them on the streets." Her voice cracked when she added, "But they're all I have." Keanu felt anger stir in him, not at Lucy, but at a world that could look at this child and these babies and decide they didn't matter. He took out his phone, fingers trembling. "Come with me," he said gently, "just for tonight, somewhere warm, safe, please." Lucy's whole body tensed. Her grip on the babies tightened, her shoulders curling forward like she expected him to snatch them away. "Why?" she asked, her voice so small he almost missed it. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Keanu looked at her, rain dripping from his hair, soaking into his shirt. "You're right. I don't know you, but I know what it feels like to have nothing. And I know what it feels like when someone chooses to stay when they don't have to." Lucy's eyes flicked from his face to the car parked by the curb. Warm light spilled from the windows. She imagined herself inside it, dry, the babies wrapped in blankets, their tiny bodies warm again. But trust was a dangerous thing. Trust had hurt her before. "How do I know you're not gonna hurt us?" she asked, voice shaking. Keanu held up his hands, palms open, like he was surrendering. "You don't," he said honestly. "But I'm not asking you to trust me forever. Just for tonight." For a long moment, Lucy didn't move. The babies stirred, their tiny cries mixing with the rain. A car sped by, splashing cold water over her shoes. Her toes were numb. She looked at Sophie and Sam, their tiny fists curled around her shirt. She knew she couldn't do this alone much longer. Finally, she nodded, "Okay." She whispered, "Just tonight." Keanu let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He helped her stand, moving slow so she wouldn't spook. She wobbled on her feet, her thin legs shaking from exhaustion. He picked up the sandwiches and bottles, stuffing them into his bag. As they walked to the car, Lucy kept her eyes low, her arms wrapped around the babies so tight they whimpered. Keanu opened the back door and turned on the heater full blast. He grabbed a blanket from the trunk and draped it over her shoulders when she slid inside. Inside the car, Lucy looked smaller than ever, a fragile shape wrapped in blankets, the babies tucked under her chin. Keanu climbed in beside her, his hands trembling on the wheel. He didn't know exactly where he was going to take her. His house felt too big, too cold for someone like her. But he knew a place, a small safe house for young mothers, one he had secretly funded for years. Maybe they'd take her in, no questions asked. But as they pulled away from the curb, Lucy's head fell forward, her eyelids fluttering shut. She hadn't slept in days. The hum of the engine and the warm air made her body go limp. The babies whimpered, but she shushed them in her sleep, her hands moving by instinct even as her mind shut down. Keanu stole glances at her through the rearview mirror. Her face looked peaceful for the first time since he'd seen her. But he knew this was only the beginning. Saving Lucy wouldn't be as simple as giving her a warm bed for the night. The world had already taken so much from her. To protect her and those babies, he'd have to face more than the cold. He'd have to face secrets hidden in shadows he hadn't walked through in years. And somewhere, deep down, he felt a truth whisper through his heart, that maybe, just maybe, Lucy would save him too. The car hummed softly as it rolled through the sleeping city. Streetlights blurred past the windows, flickering across Lucy's tired face. She didn't wake. Her head rested against the window. The two babies pressed close to her chest like tiny warm secret she refused to let go. Keanu kept glancing at the mirror, as if he needed to see her breathing to believe this was real. He parked in front of a small brick house on a quiet street. It didn't look like much from the outside. Just an old bungalow with a porch light that flickered and a sign that said "Hope Home." But inside, it was warm, safe, and known only to a few people who cared more than they talked. Keanu had given money to keep its doors open, but he'd never brought anyone here himself. Until now. He stepped out, his boots crunching on the gravel. He opened the back door, careful not to wake Lucy, but the cold air stirred her, and she blinked awake, eyes wide with confusion. "Where are we?" she asked, clutching the babies so tight they squeaked in protest. "A safe place," Keanu said, gently. "Just trust me a little longer, okay?" Lucy looked past him at the old house. Warm light glowed through the curtains. She could almost feel it on her skin. The promise of dry clothes, hot soup, a bed. But the same fear tugged at her chest. Too many nights she'd gone to places that promised help, only to be turned away or treated like dirt. "They won't take my babies," she said, her voice shaking. "They'll try to, I know they will." Keanu crouched down, his breath fogging in the cold. "Lucy, look at me. I won't let that happen. You and your babies stay together. That's my promise." She stared at him, searching for a lie. She couldn't find. Her eyes were so tired, her hope stretched thin like a thread ready to snap. Then, slowly, she nodded. Inside, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and strong shoulders opened the door. Her name was Jana. She ran Hope home, like a fortress of kindness, strict but soft where it mattered. She raised her eyebrows when she saw Keanu standing on the porch, soaked to the bone, with a homeless girl and two shivering babies. "KeanuReeves, what did you drag in this time?" she asked, half teasing, half scolding. "A family," Keanu said. "They need you." Janet's eyes softened the moment she looked at Lucy. "Come on in, sweetheart," she said, stepping aside. The warmth of the house spilled out onto the porch like an invisible hug. Lucy stepped inside, her shoulders tense, her eyes darting to every corner like she expected it to vanish. Jana led her to a couch by the fireplace. A woman in scrubs appeared with soft blankets and a kettle of warm milk. Lucy sat stiffly while they checked the babies, their tiny faces relaxing as they sipped warm drops from small bottles. Sophie's fist curled around Lucy's finger, refusing to let go. Keanu sat on the floor nearby, watching her. Jana handed him a mug of tea, then gave him a look only old friends could give. "You know she'll need more than tonight," she said quietly. "This is a good start. But she's been through things we can't fix with soup and soft blankets." "I know," Keanu said. His voice was tired. "But sure, but I have to try." Lucy's eyes met his across the room. She saw the worry he tried to hide. She wondered why a man like him, someone people pointed at in movies, someone who could disappear behind locked gates, would sit here in an old shelter with a girl like her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her voice was so small. The crackling fire almost swallowed it. Keanu set down his tea and moved closer. "Because you remind me of someone I once knew, someone I failed." He paused, his eyes darkening like a storm cloud passing over the sun. "I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you." Lucy shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I'm not worth it. I messed up everything. I don't even know who their father is anymore. No one wants a girl like me." Keanu reached for her hand, careful not to scare her. "I do. Jana does. You don't have to believe in yourself yet. Let us do it for you until you can." The babies stirred. Lucy wiped her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. She looked around the warm room, the old rugs, the shelves filled with donated toys, the smell of soup simmering on the stove. For the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she and her babies would survive the night, and maybe, if she was brave enough, they might survive all the nights that came after. But deep in the shadows outside, a car sat across the street, its engine idling. A man watched the warm windows through rain-speckled glass. He tapped a finger on the steering wheel, eyes locked on Lucy's shape inside. The past she'd run from was closer than she thought, and the choice Keanu made tonight to help her, to protect her, would drag him into a fight he never saw coming. Asterisk the next morning. The storm had passed, but the air still felt sharp like tiny knives against skin. Inside Hope home, Lucy woke up in a warm bed for the first time in months. Her eyes blinked open to the soft creak of the old house, the distant sound of someone laughing in the kitchen. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt the weight of Sophie and Sam curled beside her, their tiny breaths warm against her arm. She lay there for a while, staring at the cracked ceiling. She still half expected it all to disappear, the blankets, the warmth, the safe walls. But the babies stirred and stretched like kittens, and she knew this moment, at least, was real. Downstairs, Keanu was talking with Jana at the kitchen table. He hadn't slept much. He kept replaying the image of Lucy curled up behind that store, rain soaking her hair as she protected those babies like they were made of gold. Jana poured him another cup of coffee, her sharp eyes softening when she looked at him. "You can't fix everyone, you know," she said, stirring her tea slowly. "I know," Keanu said, "but I can try to fix this." Jana leaned back in her chair, studying him like she was trying to read a page he didn't want her to see. "She trusts you. You know how rare that is for someone like her." Keanu nodded, his jaw tense. "And I won't break it." Upstairs, Lucy got the babies dressed in clean clothes someone from the shelter had found, a pair of tiny, yellow sweaters, socks too big for their feet. She carried them downstairs, one on each hip, her shoulders squared like a soldier's. When she reached the kitchen, she stopped in the doorway. Keanu's eyes lit up when he saw her. "You okay?" he asked. Lucy shrugged, shifting Sam to her other arm. "I'm warm. They're warm. I don't remember the last time we were warm." She paused, then added, "Thank you." Before Keanu could answer, the front door rattled open. A young man in a hoodie stepped inside, dropping a bag of donated groceries on the floor. He froze when he saw Lucy. His eyes flicked to the babies, then to Keanu, then back to Lucy. "Lucy?" the guy said, his voice low, careful. "I've been looking for you." Lucy stiffened. The color drained from her face so fast Keanu thought she might drop. She took a step back, pressing the babies closer. Keanu stood. "Who are you?" His voice was calm, but there was a steel edge to it now. The guy held up his hands like he meant no harm. "Name's Ricky. Me and Lucy, we used to crash at the same shelter." She left without saying a word. "We was worried, that's all." Lucy's voice cracked. "You weren't worried. You wanted me to stay with you. You wanted me to do things for you." Ricky's eyes narrowed. "Girl, you was safe with me. Better than running on your own." Keanu stepped forward, blocking Ricky's view of Lucy and the babies. "You need to leave now." Ricky laughed, a harsh sound in the warm kitchen. "You think you can protect her forever? You think she's your charity project?" He leaned in close, eyes hard. "She's got people looking for her, people you don't want to cross." Lucy's knees buckled. Jana was there in an instant, guiding her to a chair, taking Sophie before she could fall. The baby squirmed, but settled in Janette's steady arms. Keanu's single quotes eyes didn't move from Ricky's face. "She's not leaving with you. You have 5 seconds to get out that door before I call the police." Ricky's grin faded. He spat on the floor, then turned for the door. "She don't belong in your world, man. You can't save trash like her. She'll mess up your pretty life soon enough." The door slammed shut behind him. Silence settled over the room, heavy as a winter coat. Lucy buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Keanu knelt in front of her. "Lucy, look at me," he said, voice steady but gentle. "Whatever you're running from, we can face it together. But you have to trust me." She looked up, eyes raw and red. "You don't know what they'll do if they find me. You don't know the people I've seen." Keanu's eyes softened. "Then tell me. Tell me so I can protect you." Lucy swallowed. She looked at Sophie in Jeanette's arms, at Sam sleeping against her chest. Then she took a breath and told him about the nights she'd spent hiding in abandoned buildings, about the men who promised safety but demanded everything in return. She told him about Ricky, how he lured lost girls like her and how he sold their bodies for a warm place to sleep, how she'd run when she found out she was pregnant. By the time she finished, her hands were trembling so bad she could barely hold Sam. But Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't look at her like she was broken or ruined. He just listened, every word sinking into him like a stone in deep water. "You're not going back there," he said finally. "I don't care what it costs me." Double quotes Lucy let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "Why, Keanu? Why would you do this for me?" He brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "Because when you protect something that's small and helpless, when you fight for it with everything you have, you deserve someone to do the same for you." Lucy leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. Sophie stirred in Jeanette's arms, her tiny fingers curling around Keanu's sleeve. But outside, hidden in the shadows, Ricky was already on his phone. The people Lucy feared were listening, and the promise Keanu had made to protect a girl and her babies from the cold was about to turn into a fight for all their lives. Lucy didn't sleep that night. She lay on her side in the small bed, one arm curved around Sam and Sophie. As they breathed softly against her chest, every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ricky's face in the doorway, the sneer when he called her trash. She felt the threat in his words, heavy like a storm that hadn't broken yet. Keanu didn't sleep much either. He sat on the couch downstairs, staring into the dim glow of the old floor lamp. Jana brought him tea that went cold in his hands. He couldn't shake the worry. How deep did Ricky's threat really go? Who were these people Lucy was running from? And what if trying to protect her put the babies in more danger? Just after dawn, Keanu heard footsteps on the creaky stairs. Lucy stood there in her oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked like she'd aged years overnight, but her eyes were clearer now, like the fog of fear had lifted just enough for her to breathe. "We have to go," she said. Her voice was rough but sure. "They'll come for me. If I stay, I'll put everyone here in danger. Jeanette's place, the other girls here. I can't do that." Keanu stood, the blanket falling from his shoulders. "Then you're not going alone." Lucy shook her head. "You've done enough, Keanu. You gave me one safe night. That's more than I had in a long time. I can't ask for more." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "You didn't ask. I offered, and I'm not backing down." Sam squeaked from the bundle in Lucy's arms, tiny fingers grasping at her sweater. Lucy kissed the top of his head, her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. Keanu reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper, an address scribbled in his messy handwriting. "There's a cabin," he said, "outside the city. No one knows about it except me. It's where I go when the world's too much. It's safe, quiet. You can stay there until we figure out what to do next." Lucy stared at the paper like it was a ticket to a different life. "Why do you care this much?" she asked, her voice cracking. Keanu didn't look away. "Because someone once saved me when I didn't believe I deserved it. You protect those babies with everything you've got. Now let someone protect you." Jana stepped forward, pressing a small envelope into Lucy's hand. "Money for the road," she said firmly. "You need formula, diapers. Don't argue with me, and don't look back." An hour later, Keanu's car rumbled down the empty highway. Lucy sat in the back seat, the twins strapped into borrowed car seats that looked too big for their tiny bodies. She kept one hand on each baby, tracing circles on their chubby cheeks. The sunrise painted gold stripes across her tired face. Halfway out of the city, Keanu noticed a black car in the rearview mirror. It stayed back, far enough to look harmless, but close enough that his gut twisted. He changed lanes. The car changed lanes. He sped up. The car sped up. Lucy saw it too. Her hand tightened on the car seat strap until her knuckles went white. "It's them," she whispered. "I know that car." Keanu's mind raced. He couldn't lead them straight to the cabin. He needed time. A plan. He turned off the main road, tires crunching over gravel as they wound through an old industrial area. Rows of abandoned warehouses and half-broken fences. What are you doing?" Lucy asked, her voice rising. "Trust me," Keanu said, his eyes locked on the mirror. "I need you to stay down. Cover the babies, no matter what happens. Don't open that door." The black car pulled in behind them, headlights cutting through the early fog. It stopped 10 yards away. Two men stepped out, rough jackets, hard faces. The kind of men who made threats feel like promises. Keanu got out slowly, hands up, heart pounding so hard he wondered if they could hear it. "Back off," he said, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut stone. "She doesn't belong to you." One man laughed, his breath fogging in the morning chill. "Everything on the street belongs to someone, and she owes. You think you can just take what ain't yours?" Keanu took a step closer. "What she owes you is nothing. She's a child with babies. Get out of here before this gets worse for you." The second man pulled a switchblade from his pocket, the metal flashing silver in the dawn light. "Old man thinks he's a hero," he sneered. Inside the car, Lucy held her breath. She pressed her lips to Sophie's head, whispering, "SHHH, baby, Mama's here. Stay quiet. Stay safe." The first man lunged. Keanu dodged, his fists landing clean and sharp. He wasn't a trained fighter, but life had taught him enough. The fight was messy, fists slamming against cold metal, boots scraping gravel. One man dropped, clutching his nose. The other swung, the blade catching Keanu's arm. Pain shot up his side, but he didn't stop. He knocked the knife away, sending it skittering under the car. Finally, the men staggered back to their car, bruised and cursing. "This ain't over," one yelled before they sped off, tail lights disappearing into the fog. Keanu leaned against the hood, breathing hard, his arm bleeding through his shirt. The cold air stung his cuts, but he didn't care. Lucy threw open the door, her eyes wide with fear. "You're hurt. Why did you do that?" He looked at her, sweat and blood on his brow, but his eyes were clear. "Because you shouldn't have to fight alone." Lucy pressed her forehead to his chest, careful of his wound, her shoulders shaking. "We can't run forever," she whispered. Keanu's single quotes S. hand rested on the back of her head. "Then we stand, together." But deep down, they both knew the fight wasn't over. The cabin would buy them time, but soon they'd have to face the world that had been chasing Lucy since the day she was born. And this time, they'd face it side by side. The small cabin sat at the edge of a thick forest, hidden behind rows of old pine trees that whistled when the wind blew. It was quiet there, the kind of quiet Lucy had never known. The air smelled of damp wood and cold morning mist. When Keanu pushed open the creaky door, Lucy stood on the porch, Sam in one arm and Sophie bundled close to her chest. Inside, the cabin was simple, 2 rooms, a fireplace, and a table scarred by years of use. Lucy stepped in slowly, like the warmth might disappear if she moved too fast. She laid the babies on a faded quilt by the fire, their tiny hands reaching for each other even in sleep. Keanu sat on the floor beside them. His arm still ached from the knife cut, now bandaged thanks to Jeanette's first aid kit. He watched Lucy move around the cabin, her hands brushing dust from old shelves, her eyes soft but searching, like she was trying to believe this place was real. "How long can we stay?" Lucy asked, her voice so small it almost got lost in the crackle of the fire. "As long as you need," Keanu said. Lucy sat across from him, her back against the log wall. She looked at her babies, at their tiny fingers curled into fists, and then back at him. "They won't stop, you know. They'll keep looking. People like Ricky, they don't just give up." Keanu leaned forward, his eyes steady. "Then, we don't hide forever. We fight back the right way. Legal help, protection. We find a way to shut them out for good. I know people who can help." Lucy laughed, but it was a laugh with no joy in it. "People always promise help. They don't stay." Keanu's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere. And you know why?" Lucy looked up, her eyes shiny in the firelight. "Because you're the bravest person I've ever met," Keanu said. "You protected them with nothing but your own arms. You kept going when you had every reason to give up. You remind me that real strength isn't loud. It's quiet and fierce and impossible to break." Lucy felt her throat close up. The tears she'd fought so hard to keep inside slipped down her cheeks now. She wiped them with the back of her hand, shaking her head. "I don't feel brave," she whispered. Keanu's voice softened. "That's how I know you are." The next days passed like something out of a dream. Keanu went into town, bringing back food, baby supplies, and fresh clothes. Lucy spent her mornings by the fire, rocking Sophie and Sam, humming songs her mother used to sing before everything went wrong. In the evenings, Keanu sat beside her, telling stories about the places he'd seen, the people he'd met, the lessons he'd learned about how broken things could still be beautiful. Slowly, Lucy began to trust him, not because he said the right words, but because he stayed when things were quiet, when there was nothing to gain. When the darkness pressed against the cabin walls, one night, a letter arrived at the cabin. Keanu opened it while Lucy watched, her heart pounding. Inside was a note from Jana. The police had raided Ricky's hideout. The men who had threatened Lucy were gone now, facing charges that would keep them far from her and her babies for a long time. Lucy sank to the floor, laughing and crying all at once. She pressed her forehead to Sophie's tiny hand, whispering, "We're safe. We're really safe." Keanu knelt beside her, his eyes soft but tired. "This is your second chance, Lucy. What do you want to do next?" She looked around the cabin. The simple table, the warm fire, the world outside that felt less dangerous now. She thought of all the other girls she'd met on the street, all the mothers who fought alone,